it was a gun.
I'm not voting.
If we want to build our nation.
The problem with the Somalians.
Just want to experience something else than a black man.
Move on, move
Can't be like
forward.
a horse with blinkers on.
Honestly say, I was about to have
Corrupt
sex and then I pulled
crap,
up.
but it's nice.
My name is Pearl. I'm Pearl Mutiba, and professionally, I'm still a producer, but I'm a production manager at Cape Town TV.
Africa Milano weekend breakfast show host on Cape Talk and 702, which is part of Prime Media Broadcasting.
I'm Siviwe Mdoda. I'm in the National Working Group of the Right to Know campaign.
I'm Tony Weaver. I've been a journalist for 34 years, 35 years.
The latest news, obviously, involving our public broadcaster has not really made any one of us more comfortable about the situation than a year ago or 2 years ago. It all started a couple of years ago when the ANC decided to bring in the concept or the notion of a secrecy bill, which I think had a lot of us in the industry just worried about what does this mean and what is going on. We're sitting in an industry that is under considerable amount of threat as far as finances are concerned, and our boardrooms are essentially determining what editorial decisions we need to make, which is unfortunate. Experienced journalists are leaving the industry, leaving the newsrooms rather juniorized, and therefore those young junior reporters are easily manipulated one way or the other. We're finding ourselves in a situation where the country, majority of South Africans, and I speak under correction, they are still very much reliant on the SABC, for example, for its source of news.
I think we see a lot of, accumulation of features of, what we used to see, under apartheid, from the 70s when there was like your Black Wednesday, when reporters were jailed, for reporting certain things. So there's this story, this good story to tell, that the media focuses too much on the negative and does not report, the positive. That's the media, That's the media. Nobody wants to hear about cats being rescued from trees, we don't want that kind of journalism.
This is what scares me about when power and corruption gets out of hand. I was on trial for nearly 2 years in the apartheid era for reporting that the Google 87 were executed by the police. And I stated it on the BBC. As I said, it was alleged. This is what the eyewitnesses alleged. Now, it emerged later that is exactly what happened. They were executed, and I was called a terrorist in Parliament by Minister Louis Lecranji, who was then the Minister of Police, for reporting this. And that is what can happen when corruption gets out of control. You can get to that extreme. And that's what scares the shit out of me, is when we start looking down that very, very dark path.
There's a lot of cracks, and now it's no more an issue of serving, of informing the public, because I strongly believe you have to inform the people what's happening behind closed doors. Hence, we have organizations such as Right to Know. We want to know what's happening. We want to know what Zoom is doing. We want to know what each and every single department is doing, because we have that right to know. Information enriches the nation. It enriches us young people to make informed decisions.
South Africa needs a very strong, credible public broadcaster for a whole host of reasons, including the fact that for a significant portion of our population, the SABC still is the primary source of information for those people. We are, a few days away from the local government elections. How is Madlamini in some rural part of South Africa going to be able to make an informed decision regarding which political party they're going to vote for if the public broadcaster is not meeting its mandate of informing that person of what they need to do and what they need to be aware of?
Right to Know is very clear that Hlaudi is not the, problem. This issue is systemic. But the removal of Hlaudi is gonna set the kind of precedence that we need. That if you are in a position that powerful and you take these particular decisions, basically, your brief says you are a COO, but how you operate each day, you are editor-in-chief, So I think, if you operate like that and you turn a public institution into some kind of a mouthpiece of a political party, then there should be consequences, And part of the consequences, should be that there should be public pressure that you need to vacate that post.
The removal of Hlaudi is step one And there's step 2, there's step 3, there's step 4. But by removing that man, I think a lot of the problems that we're facing with the SABC will certainly be addressed.
He's got ministerial protection. You know, I mean, Baba loves Sladi. You know, this is what was said. The minister is totally behind him, and it's you know, look, everywhere in the world where there's a state broadcaster, it's contested terrain. The BBC is very contested terrain in the UK. It's they're constantly, whichever party is the ruling party, they're always trying to get more control over the BBC. I mean, I worked for them for a long time. I know. National Public Radio in the States, they're all very contested areas. But, I mean, what we've got happening here is total capture of the institution.
But I think going back to Hlaudi, I personally think that he's not working alone. Okay, I don't think he's the mastermind of everything that's happening at the moment, because a lot of people, I hear a lot of debates, and I really don't entertain them most of the times. You know, I'm not a journalist, as I said, but I have a lot of done so many work when it comes to TV. But what I can honestly say is that he's not working alone. He's taking orders, and I just feel, obviously, when I work with my team at work, you know, there's a specific way that I want them to work. But that doesn't only come from me. There's somebody else who's controlling me, and I'm then in return just enforcing that control to the workers so that they can actually meet the demands of what the station needs. So I personally think that probably, I'm not saying it's like that, he is controlled by the ANC.
What we see with Hlaudi, you know, I hear you, Pearl, that Hlaudi is a messenger. Hlaudi is being protected, you know. But I do not think that we can sit down. We do not have the luxury of trying to find out who is behind Hlaudi. We need to put pressure at the point where we see things. Because it's Hlaudi that is making an announcement that is creating this atmosphere at the SABC.
What we have to fear now in South Africa is the power of the intelligence agencies, the fact that the military, the police, and the intelligence agencies are getting such a grip on power, on state power, are so close to the presidency. And a lot of, I think, what's happening now is being driven by the intelligence services. I keep getting echoes of the apartheid era, of what happens when the politicians start saying, hang on, the only way we can really control this thing is through what the National Party used to call kragdadigheid, you know, clamping down.
What is happening on radio, you know, right now at SABC is quite interesting, you know, that with this 90% content, you know, that a lot of people are ululating this, you know, whereas they do not see, you know, that underneath this sugar coat, there is a very serious element of censorship here, you know, because what is going to happen is that what kind of artists are going to get airplay? Are they the kind of artists that are going to ask questions about the political system in the country? No. You know, definitely there's a lot of, there is this resurgence of voices, particularly by young artists, where they are asking very serious questions about this country through their music. But you don't get to hear that, you know, because we are all, you know, caught up in this euphoria of 90%.
But the opportunity it represents is that there is an artist, Psyche, for example, who I'll be seeing at the National Arts Festival this coming week, who's an incredible musician, who a month ago would never have enjoyed airplay in a South African radio station, because the kind of music that Metro covers would be primarily R&B and hip-hop, and then Afro-soul, if you like, South African hip-hop perhaps, and the kind of music that she plays doesn't quite fit into the genre, so therefore, because they've got plenty of international music, they don't have to look for a Psyche of this world. So she would exist in the underground.
The timing of this decision tied to the timing of the elections. You know, it was made in May. We have June month. June month is Youth Month. So we're going to bombard the airwaves with, you know, June 16, Liberation Struggle, you know. Then we come to July. Then we have Madiba as a voiceover and all the Mandela praising songs, you know, being in the airwaves. And then shortly when we begin, you know, shortly when that month ends, and then we begin Women's Month, you know, we have an election, you know. So we need to look at this. I agree. It's a progressive decision. But it's a progressive decision whose timing is questionable.
If you win the community, you've won the nation. Okay, because I mean, they strong, extremely united, and they can actually, community, township people around the township can actually make things happen. That's one thing. Hence, when they protest for service deliverance, they will like break things, and they sending out a point that, look, if you're not gonna give us water or this or free whatever, this is what's gonna be happening. I think simple terms such as censorship needs to be explained to them. What is it?
The things they worry about are slightly more, for lack of a better word, basic than that. They're worried about heating. They're worried about not having their roof leaking at the end of the day when it rains. They're worried about what they're going to be having for dinner. They're worrying about having money to take a train that hopefully will show up on time to transport them to work and to school the very next day. That's what they're worried about. And they, in some way, I suppose, accepting whatever it is that we're giving them as a people who are producing the stories out there, but reflecting the stories out there and reporting on them. That's possibly why you do not have a busload of Seskona-esque militant, motivated people who are taken to the streets throwing feces in order to ask and demand for a free press. Because I think there's possibly a lack of appreciation of how fundamental a right this is and how we need to be fighting for it as much as we're fighting for housing, for sanitation, and for everything else basically that is of concern in South Africa right now.
My dream is to live in a country where the government will think twice or thrice before it takes a decision that knows that it will hurt the people.
My dream is that we go back to what we fought for before we got democracy, and that is a non-racial democratic South Africa.
My dream is for the youth of today to celebrate life, to study more, to remember and know that their freedom was fought for.
My dream is that all South Africans would realize that in our constitution we have an extraordinary document, and that each and every one of us must be able to hold it up and take it to any would-be politician, corrupt official and say, not in my name.
Yazi, you should ever sit and talk with people, or else take a walk and create a straight talk. Talk what is nice, it will make you feel stronger. Listen what is right and say what is wrong. You should ever sit and talk with people, or else take a walk and create a straight talk. Talk what is nice, it will make you feel stronger. Listen what is right and say what is wrong.
I'm in the National Working Group of the Right to Know campaign.
I'm Tony Weaver. I've been a journalist for 34 years, 35 years.
The latest news, obviously, involving our public broadcaster has not really made any one of us.
It was a gun.
I'm not voting.
If we want to build our nation,
The problem with the Somalians,
Just want to experience something else than a black man.
Move on, move
Can't be like
forward.
a horse with blinkers on.
Honestly say, I was about to have sex
Corrupt
and then I pulled
crap,
up.
but it's nice.
My name is Pearl. I'm Pearl Mutiba, and professionally I'm still a producer, but I'm a production manager at Cape Town TV.
Africa Milano Weekend Breakfast Show host on Cape Talk and 702, which is part of Prime Media Broadcasting. Was more comfortable about the situation than a year ago or 2 years ago. It all started a couple of years ago when the ANC decided to bring in the concept or the notion of a secrecy bill, which I think had a lot of us in the industry just worried about what does this mean and what is going on. We're sitting in an industry that is under considerable amount of threat as far as finances are concerned, and our boardrooms are essentially determining what editorial decisions